All right, welcome everyone to my first stream. So today I decided, um, after some recent change ups to my employment status with Meta, that I was going to focus on doing more content. Obviously, I create music and sound design and do different things often. And I was like, why not just record it? Why not, do more for the community, get people involved, and collaborate and uh, you know, put out some stuff that I do with my workflow and how that works. So that's where we are. Yeah, so we're here, and yeah, so today, being the first stream, I thought it'd be kind of cool. One thing that I've started doing recently is taking old films and flipping them over to more modern scores, modern sound design, a lot of public domain. So there's some great films from the 1950s in particular that are within the public domain now. And with new technology, there's a lot of people out there who have taken, uh, you know, the different films and converted them into color. So from black and white to color. But they still have the old scores, they still have the old sound design. I've been doing projects where I take that stuff and kind of modernize them. And so what I have is a film that we are going to work on today that I'm pretty excited about, and kind of go about doing some sound design on that and talk about my process. I think today's going to focus mostly on the score. So if you can see the title of the stream today, it's basically we're going to take all this awesome synth gear that you see behind me. I have a bunch of analog synths, and we'll go over those in just a second. But I'm going to take those and I'm going to basically make like a John Carpenter-esque Stranger Things style score to this very weird, almost trippy 1955, 1964 film that's also in public domain. And we're going to get into that in a second, because if you know anything about copyright law, 1964 it would still fall within the realm of copyright, but there's actually like an interesting scenario with this one where it actually is it's outside of copyright now. It's in public domain. And an online channel that I follow on YouTube took the black and white and converted it over to color. So we're going to take that and strip out the orchestral score, and we're going to put in like a creepy, sound designy, modern style score. And I took a scene from that film that we're going to work on today. I have others that I've been posting. So this is live on TikTok. This is live on Twitch. This is live on YouTube. But you can follow me on Instagram. I post a lot of clips on Instagram. Particularly, I've been posting clips of what I've been working on with this film on Instagram. So this is a different scene. We're going to start it from scratch today. I'm going to show you how I stripped out the audio, and we're going to score it. Yeah, let's get started. So the film we're going to be working on today is called The Last Man. And what I'm going to show you first is I'm actually going to show you a little bit about the film. So give me 1 second here. So the film itself, like I said, is 1964. And it's basically kind of like maybe one of the first zombie movies, I guess, kind of. It's really interesting. It's really trippy. It's almost like vampires that turn people into zombies. It's a really interesting take on what we think of as like modern zombies, I guess. Yeah, so this is the film we're going to be working on. Just a little bit about it. Like I said, 1964. And there's actually an error when they filed the copyright for this. So it's actually considered public domain, which is nice. So this is good. So one thing that I like to recommend to up and coming composers, or if you're just looking to boost your portfolio, is there's a ton of public domain films out there, and this is actually something that I learned from my master's program at the University of West London, London College of Music, is we take a lot of public domain uh, films and different things and rescore them, to use for portfolio. And there's some awesome, really trippy horror films from that time. Nosferatu, for example, the original is in that time, so you can take that and rescore it and remake it, and use those in portfolio without having to worry about copyright strikes. And if you're somebody like me who likes to embrace synthesizers in addition to orchestral music, it's something you can change quite a bit, because a lot of those old scores were orchestral only. Not only because orchestra was the way for film music then, but a lot of the synthesizers didn't exist yet. So the cool thing about this is it's kind of giving it a new, fresh take, a new life on what these films could be from a soundtrack standpoint. So anyways, so let's go ahead. I'm gonna take this off here, and let's take a look at what we got. I'm using Ableton. All right, so the cool thing is I've gone through and I've already stripped out the scene we were going to use, and I'll explain that in just a second. Now, if you're familiar with Ableton, I personally like to use Ableton. It's kind of the black sheep, I guess, or the outside standalone, that a lot of people don't really like to use it. It's really, I guess, just because it's not very good at video encoding. I noticed, especially on PC, I tried using it on PC. I'm a Mac user myself, if you can't tell, but the video encoders on PC aren't great. But it works fairly decent on Mac, and it's for my workflow, and particularly, especially when I'm doing synthesizer-based scores, automation-wise, it seems to work the best for me. So yeah, so Ableton is definitely where it's at. Yeah. I'll shout out to Rudes in the chat. What's up, man? How you doing? Appreciate you stopping by. Yeah, Ableton gang for sure. That's for sure. So Ableton is my workflow. So if you're like, a beat maker, which is my background, so I come from electronic music originally and jazz music and that kind of thing. And a lot of my music was around making records, sample packs, and I'm sure we'll probably do some sample pack stuff on the channel as well. But Ableton was kind of what I used, and that's how I got into making music. So we're gonna talk about that a little bit, let's get into it. So I'm gonna play the scene here. So this has all the original score, all the original dialogue. I'm gonna show you how to strip all that out. The new version of Ableton actually has sem separation built right into it. I can show you some other ways to do it too. There's some other cool software out there. Shout out to Serato Samples particularly. I can show you how to do that in a second. If you don't have the newest version of Ableton, or if you're using a different DAW like Logic, but I believe Logic has some stem separation now as well. But let's take a listen. And I'm going to make this a little bit larger so you guys can see it. But here is the original. And like I said, originally this was in black and white. So we're going to play it.
The sun's already set. They'll be everywhere. It's Morgan. Get him.
The costumes are funny. All right, well, I think you get the idea. We'll get into it more as we go on here. But yeah, so that's what we're going to be scoring today. So you see a couple different cue points there, and I'm going to break that down in a second. There's things that I, usually when I get a score or when I get, whether it's doing something for a demo or whether it's for an individual scene. A lot of times there's auditions for certain parts and different things like that you may need to do before you can even get considered to score the film. And so usually you're receiving 1 or 2 clips. And so for me, the first time I watched the clip, I like to ask a lot of questions. So for example, if I had received this clip from like a director, right, or a producer, if I'm auditioning for a particular role, I might, ask them, in your mind, what were you thinking, when you wrote this, if they're the writer, or what were you thinking when you directed this? Or if it's the producer, asking them, were you on set the day they shot this? Can you explain how the director explained it to the actors, or anything like that may give me insight into what the scene's trying to capture. Just like music, film is also subjective, right? So sometimes you may get a different feeling that's either parallel or adjacent to what the director was trying to do, right? And so it's important to kind of make sure that that communication is there, and you can, really capture what they're looking for. And if you're lucky, sometimes there's temp music, right? So the director may send music that's inside the track already. And they'll say, this is what I was thinking. And the good thing about that is usually that gives you the pacing that they were going for. So a lot of times I noticed if a director, especially in indie film, or a producer, they may also be the editor. And so they're editing the music, right, to the film, or I'm sorry, they're editing the film to the music, right? So they use a track to kind of get the pacing, right? They cut at certain points, and I think you might be surprised. A lot of directors are actually musicians themselves. So sometimes you'll get somebody who's knowledgeable about music, and they may use a certain tempo, a certain track to kind of get that pacing in addition to the feeling, right? And I would say 90% of what I've done has been around that. And if you're new to the channel, if you're not familiar with my work, I've been very fortunate over the past couple of years. I've done 4 feature films, 2 shorts, 3 video games, and like I said, a bunch of different sample packs and different things like that. But from a film perspective, I've auditioned for a lot too, and most of the time the director will have an idea of the music they want, and that kind of gives you the pacing. So anyways, so let's go ahead and first we got to strip out the music and background sounds and all this from this. So like I said, Ableton, the newest version, which I believe, let's see, which one are we on here? I think I have the most recent. I want to say, where is the about? About right here. Here we go. So this is 12.4.1. So 12.4.1. So you can actually go, if you right click on the track, you can go right here and you go to separate stems to new audio tracks, and it'll pull up this window. And, I personally do all of them just because it's vocals, drums, bass, others. It's very generic. And it does a really good job at vocals, but sometimes with sound effects, for example, like the zombie growls and all the stuff that you saw in there, or like the car sound effects, the machinery, that kind of thing. It could actually it'll put those in different categories. So it's good just to kind of select all of them and then go through, which we'll do in a second. And then I change it to high quality, which actually usually takes a couple, 30 seconds more maybe, but it's a much better quality. So we're going to go ahead and tap separate. So as it's separating here, You'll see it'll do its thing. Appreciate all those tuning in, watching right now. Especially over on TikTok. A lot of people over on TikTok. Appreciate that. All right. Okay. So what Ableton does here is it'll mute the original track, and then it gives you 4 of these stems, right? So like I was saying, you have your other, which is pretty much anything outside of what it considers drum or percussion, the dialogue or the vocals, and then melody, I think music, which is the piano keys. So we can see here, we can now listen to this. And what I'm going to do actually is it usually mutes the track. Like if you're doing a regular, song, or if you're trying to pull samples from something, it'll do the actual track, but we don't want to do that. We actually want to see the video, because when this is muted, it's just a black screen here. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to reactivate this track, and you can do that just by tapping 0, or there's a plus or a little checkbox down here in the left hand corner, right in your clip view here, but 0 is the fast key. And then we're just going to come up right here, and we're going to mute the track. So now that I have it muted, it'll just play the stems, and we'll still be able to see the video here. Okay. So again, it's probably really low on your end. And we can actually fix that. Let's go ahead. We're actually going to pull in just a limiter here so we can boost it up a little bit. And I do this a lot when I'm working. I have the FabFilter stuff, which I swear by. And a lot of professional audio guys I know like to use this as well. We'll get into more detail about that later, but we'll just boost it a little bit so it's a little bit easier to hear on your end. All right, so orchestral score, got everything. Pretty much it seems like it actually put most of it here. So we can actually mute that, and that's mostly the music. And then let's see what we got here. This should be dialogue.
The sun's already set.
Yep.
They'll be everywhere.
And Ableton actually does a really good job of this, to be honest. If you're not using Ableton or Logic, like I said, and I don't know if Cubase does now, like I said, my apologies. Sound off in the chat if you know. If you use another DAW, please let me know if it has these built-in features. Let's take a look here. I'm actually just going to create a MIDI track, and I'll show you another way to do it. So one of the fast ways I used to do this is I have Serato samples. Shout out to Serato, love all those guys making incredible stuff. And we're going to be using hex effects quite a bit, which you'll see. It's kind of my little vintage sauce that I put on there to make things sound nice with the synths. But we'll get there in a little bit. So what you can actually do is you can actually just drag and drop. It's we have to consolidate this first. Now, here's the thing. Sometimes when you consolidate the video, and this is one thing that people like to complain a lot about with Ableton, is it'll delete the actual video. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to make a copy of this, just Command D for duplicate. And then I'm just going to do Command J for consolidate. And you see it's telling me it's going to remove the video, but that's okay. We don't care about that because we have a copy. And we're going to take this and drag it over and drop it on to Serato. And Serato has the same features. So basically what you can do, it's just that this nice thing about Ableton's built-in is it kind of splits it up into the different stems here. But what we can actually do here is I can go just tap A here. So I just clicked on it, or you can use your keyboard. And I can just kind of go like this, and it'll remove everything except for our vocals, which is what we want. And then if I go up here and I just go to bounce track in place, we can actually compare Ableton and Serato and see how it goes too. So this is like a fast way to do this. Oh, actually, oh, sorry. Actually, it's not going to show anything. I just realized you got to do something else first. Whoops. Hold on one sec. Yeah. It's like, dude, you did it the wrong way. Here, we got to do this first. Come here. We're going to do Command-Shift-M. Okay. And we are going to add in a MIDI block here. Just Command U to make sure we want it to start from the very beginning. I'm going to hit legato, so it goes all the way to the end. Oh, and that's actually K. And that's another way you can do it too. It's fine either way. It just sets a mark right there. And I'm going to bounce track in place. You can see it's going through, because basically it's just holding the keyboard. And you can see, oh, it actually picked up a little bit more here than what Ableton. So there's a little difference. So let's see, right here. Let's see, we got...
Already set.
Ah, see, I see why. Sorry. Man, I'm really messing up, guys. I'm sorry. We got to actually go into Serato again, because it synced with the time. And we're going to turn sync off. That's what we're going to do. And then we're going to bounce to track in place. And this should actually give us the correct one. There we go. And you can see it's lining up a lot better now. So that was the reason. So yeah, so just make sure if you're doing the Serato way, just make sure you turn sync off, because basically it's trying to analyze that file and it's trying to map out the BPM just like you would if you were using the clip view in Ableton. And then match it that way.
The sun's already set.
So you can see we got both of those there. It does look... So you can see, interestingly enough, this is good, actually. In this section here, it picked up the choir, which we don't want, because that's more of like a musical thing, right? So it did here. It might have picked up on the end. So it did pick up some choir there too, which makes sense because it is vocals. Right? So, you know, use them both. It's not perfect. I think when it comes to portfolio purposes, it's fine. You know, and you can kind of go in and we'll clean it up a little bit more. But for our purposes, what we're going to do is we're actually going to delete this guy, because this is basically all the orchestral music. And so we just have the sound effects now, so we can probably take this out, because it looks like it's mostly just choir there. There's some sound effects here, right? Some rummaging around there. It's actually interesting because it's almost like they use the zombie growls and stuff there as part of the choir, which is kind of a cool musical thing there. There's your car drive-by. So as you can see, even some of the sound effects are a little bit dated. So take some of that out because it's not there.
It's Morgan. Get in.
Okay. And if you're not sure, you can always do this too. Turn back on the original.
It's Morgan. Get in.
So it's kind of weird, but that's there, so we're going to use it. A very exaggerated zombie yell. This guy is not. kind of a weird zombie yell out there. Okay. Anyways, so you get the idea. So, and we can kind of do this as we go too. But I'm antsy. I want to start actually creating some music. So, but this is usually the first part, right? So there's still one more step to go, right? So what we have to figure out is what is the tempo that we're going to use, right? So, you know, there's a few different ways to do this. What I usually like to do, so for example, let me take a step back. As I mentioned in the intro, if somebody is, let's say, using, you know, a temp track, a temp track is like a really good way to go about finding the tempo, right? Because like I said, a lot of times a producer, an editor, the director, whoever's doing the film, depending on the scale of the production, usually they're editing the music, just because it's really good pacing and it stays consistent, right? So if you have that temp track, even for example, I worked with a director on a project where he used temp music, but he was like, I don't want to use this style of music. But I still was able to extract the BPM from that and kind of build tracks around that BPM to make sure the pacing matched, right? So that's a little tip, I guess, that I've learned over time that works really well. So I'm going to pretend that this doesn't have temp music, though, just for the sake of what we're working on, because it's completely different, right? Because this is orchestral. Again, we're trying to do like a modern synthesizer score. Okay, so we have to figure out where we want music to start. Now, again, if there's temp music in there, usually it'll mark that. This clip is interesting because, as you can see in the original, there's music throughout the whole thing. And you can actually kind of hear the beats in this. So, for example, boom, 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 there's a downbeat right here. Right here. Right? And we can see on the top of Ableton here where our marker was at, right? So, if you wanted to do it with, the original pacing in mind, you literally can just kind of zoom in, and I can see that's about right here. That's our downbeat. And I'm actually just gonna, so right now, it's a little past beat number 2, so we're just gonna pull this back. And you can see everything fell in line with the 2 in Ableton, so it's mapped to the grid. Right? So it's roughly about 72. And it looks like the original may even had some tempo or some time measure changes. Right? So you can see this first bar is roughly 4 beats, and then it goes kind of slower a little bit. Boom, boom. So it actually kind of what they call in classical music a ritardando, which is basically a slowdown, right? So it's slowing down in its style. Again, personally, this is why, for what our purpose today is, I'm going to kind of go my own route, right? I'm not actually going to focus on using that same tempo. And you can see like right here, right? So there's actually a really hard hit right there. So that, if I was not going by the original, so let's actually go back. So it was originally 92, right? So right there is a hard hit, right? And I have to decide, what am I trying to do here, right? Am I trying to do something that's more high energy? Am I trying to do something that's, more low key? Obviously, this is a very frantic scene, right? So we're going to want something that has some high energy, right? We're going to want it to have, a pulse to it. We're going to want it to feel chaotic, right? And it's kind of harder to do when we have slower music. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm actually going to speed it up, knowing that this first hit right here is kind of where I want it to start, because as you can see, he runs out of the church, right? So I'm actually going to speed this up and try to match it as close to 9 as possible, which, if we think about it from a standpoint of, what we like as electronic producers or composers or whatever you may say, somebody maybe who doesn't come from a traditional scoring background, 8 bars is good, right? So we want to have something that's around 8 bars, completed before we start the next phrase. So I'm actually just going to arrow this up and get as close as I can to this right here. Okay. Now, you can see it's still off just a little bit. And that is important because you can see here there's a cut, right? So it goes from inside the church to outside the church, right? And we can kind of go frame by frame here, and we can see that roughly right here, okay, about an eighth, about an eighth note passed. So you can see in Ableton, this is another reason I like to use this, down here in the right-hand corner of our arrangement view, we can see that's an eighth note. So I'm about halfway through there. So I know, right, that I want there to be, this is where I want the cut to start. So right away, right, my opinion, okay, just from my standpoint, is even though there are some changes here, okay, we just turned it off. Even though there are some changes here, as far as the camera, cuts, right? So we're given different views of what's going on. We're still inside the church, right? So there really isn't anything crazy going on there. And we can see, right, that the big change is when he frantically starts to run away. So that is where we want the music to have something that happens that shows that something is going on in that particular moment, okay? So let me go back to this again. And let me find where that was at. Right there, it looks like. We're just going to make sure. Yeah, it's right on that 91.3, which I said was an eighth note. Okay, so you can see up here in the left-hand corner, my session is defaulted to 4/4 time, right? So 4/4, easy. What I can do, though, is I'm actually going to insert a time signature change here, all right? Now, this is where having some classical music theory knowledge comes into play. I do think, from a scoring perspective, it has helped me quite a bit. And, just so you know, like I was like in band in high school and, all that kind of stuff, but I actually didn't study classical music until the pandemic, until 2020 is when I went back to school. Like I said, I was doing electronic music and jazz music for a long time, and I applied to Juilliard on a whim and got into one of the graduate certificate programs in film composition. I learned a lot. I learned about orchestra, I learned about classical phrasing, and a lot of it was based in film particularly, which helped me out immensely. And then now in my studies for my master's at the University of West London, I use this all the time. So even with electronic music, even with something that's more based on, non-traditional, more contemporary music, having that knowledge still helps, right? So, for example, in music theory, we know for you guys, and I'm sure everybody out there is familiar if you're watching this, there's 4 beats in a bar, right? So, and I mean, it can vary obviously, but in traditional pop music, we have 4 beats in a bar, right? So whether it's house music, hip hop, pop, whatever it may be, right? Now, we can break those down. We call those quarter notes, and we can break those down even further, right? So we can break those in half into eighth notes, right? So we have 8 eighth notes in a measure, right? So for example, if we look at here, again, if we look in our right-hand corner, we have eighth, right? So we know between measure 8 and measure 9, there's 8 eighth notes. But as you can see, this actually starts, the scene transitions on the second eighth note in bar number 9, right? So what I want to do is I'm going to extend this bar. And so I can do that by going into, just right-clicking on the top here, right underneath our ruler here, insert time signature change, and I'm actually going to type in 9/8. So I wanted to go the full measure plus 1/8 note, and I'm going to tap enter. And now, if I look on 9, you can see the transition happens right on 9, and I'm going to come back out here, and I'm going to insert in 4/4. Okay. Now, here's the interesting thing, okay? You kind of have to think ahead here, because what usually will happen in this scenario is you're going to have something happen when the music goes to change, because it's going to feel a little bit longer, right? So the thing is if you have a popular, if you have somebody who listens to popular music, and everybody obviously listens to popular music and that kind of stuff these days, if their brain is conditioned to recognize that something happens after those 4 beats, even hanging on a little bit extra can feel a little off. So that's something that we have to consider with film scoring, because music is supposed to complement the scene. So you can get away with a little bit more, but it's still something good to kind of keep in the back of your head. All right, so now if we watch this, it should transition right here. And I'm actually going to turn on our metronome so we can hear those eighth notes. So we'll start in 7 so you can hear the 4 beats, and you can see we have it automated up here. That's what that little red dot means. And when we get to 8, it's actually going to switch over and it's going to move through to 9. So you can hear our beats.
Already set. They'll be everywhere.
Right? And so you heard the hard beat, hard downbeat there.
They'll be everywhere.
Boom. Right? Okay, so perfect. So now we know we have one cut in place. And like I said, we could, and we may, and when we go back to it, add in more here, right? We may do changes. For example, this doesn't line up quite perfectly when it switches over, right? You can see it kind of happens on the second, man, a lot of second eighth notes. Or is that the second beat? That's actually second beat, excuse me. The second beat of the second bar, we have a change, right? So there's a camera cut there. And you may want to mark that. But in this particular situation, like I said, in my personal taste here, I don't think it's necessary, personally. I think that because this isn't really a scene change, right? Maybe when it actually changes more to him, which actually works out, is right on bar 4. Look at that, right? So we can see, boom, right on 4, we have a change of a close-up. So maybe we add something in there, and it pretty much stays. Oh, we have the switch to the gun case, or is it what is that? Oh no, I was gonna say gun case. That's hilarious. I think it's just a gate with trees behind it. That's funny. It switches to those trees on beat 3 there, but that's okay because again, you know, we could, because it's actually on a solid quarter note in a 4/4 bar, we could just, for example, maybe drop the music out there when it's right before it switches to this 9/8, right? So we have him looking, he looks, he sees the time difference, there's dialogue there, so we know something has to happen, and then we're gonna switch over and go out, at our bar number 9. So anyways, all right, so what we're gonna do though is, because I wanna make sure that it's consistent, I'm actually gonna go more here and see if there's any other changes. So we see he runs out. So we can see there's another change with the zombies come in the picture here. But again, it's happening on beat number 2. Kind of wild, right? So there's a few different things we could do here, right? We can extend this phrase and we can make it 5/4, which is the same as 9/8, except instead of an extra eighth note in that bar, we're adding an extra quarter note, right? So we could bring it to 5/4 and have it kind of play out from there if we want something to happen. Or the nice thing about that is, if you're familiar with pop music, usually in pop music or synth music, anything that's more contemporary, we're accenting beat 2 anyways with a snare, right? So usually it's kick, snare, boots and pants, right? So we want that hit on the 2 and the 4, right? In contemporary music. Classical music is a little bit different, but in this particular case, right, we are trying just to accent that 2 and the 4. So I actually think it's going to work out. We don't really need to do anything there. And let's see what else we got here. So we can see he kind of runs up here. And then again on 2, this is where they kind of lock up, you can see, and they start to get into a fight. And there's more fights there. And then we see there's a change, right? Okay, so because this is more of a change where he starts to maybe run away, and it's quite a flip of the camera angle, right? And then it kind of stays more consistent for a little while, right? Maybe we want something to happen here, right? So he gets into this scuffle, and then he gets away, and he starts to run away, right? And we can see the camera changes right after 3, right? So I zoomed in a little bit here. We're on a 16th note now. Now, there's a few different ways to handle this. We could, for example, just like there's 8 eighth notes in a measure, there's 16th notes in a measure also, right? So we could kind of break this down even more, and we could say, all right, and you can see we have the slashes here. We could say, okay, we're going to go 9/16 in bar 14 as our time signature change. That could work, right? We could give it a value of 9/16. Because it's not that much of a difference, I'm actually going to just keep it as quarter notes because especially with synth music, and again, what people are used to with those quarter notes, those full beats, we don't want to change it up too much. And because the scene is changing a little bit, it's not completely new. There's not something crazy ridiculous happening, but it's enough for me to feel like something musically should happen there. I'm actually going to go in and I'm going to add in a 2/4. Okay, so we're going 2 beats and we're going to bring it back a 4/4 at 15, right? So, for example, even though it happens a little bit early, oh, excuse me, did I do it a little bit too soon? Whoops. Let me go back here. I did do it a little early. Or did I do it early? Let me do this again. Let's see. Sorry, guys. 2/4. Oh, yeah, I was right. I did it right. And the 4/4. Sorry, I was just a little confused when I looked at the video, but that was right. Okay, so we have our 2/4 and the 5/4. Now, if you listen to the metronome, nothing really different happens, right? Nothing really different happens. It sounds the same, but that's more for us to know musically that something needs to change, and the way the beats will be accented, right? So, for example, especially from a classical music standpoint, that actually makes a difference because that lets the musicians know something musically is going to happen, right? And I like to think of the same. So the way I write with synths, I think is very, because of my training for film music, is very similar to how I'd write for like an orchestra or an ensemble. So this is kind of what, I try to think of it that way, right? So again, we have this change, and even you can see it's almost spot on actually. So I don't even think that 16th really mattered. And it continues on. He's going to run, right? So he stops, and we have another change here, which looks like, again, it happens almost on beat number 2. Man, that's so crazy, right? So you get to see a pattern, and this happens often. You're seeing these things of happening, and it could be how the original score was written, right? So maybe that accent on 2 was something that they were trying to capture, right? So I'm actually going to have it go here, and we can actually see he has the kind of like a shocked look on his face when he gets to the 1. So we can actually do bump bomb right there, right? So we can have 2 accents on the 1 and the 2, and I think it'll be very cool. So again, we can kind of leave that going, 4/4. And you see that lined up perfect, right? Some very cheesy sound effects there. And again, because there's not much happening here, it's just a fight, we're gonna have to make that like high energy. But again, we can kind of keep that the same. And we have to see when he drives off and when does it change. So it's pretty much just before beat 3. So we might be able, actually it might even be on beat 3. We can do the same thing here. We're actually going to switch this to 2/4 and then bring back in 4/4, right? So again, cutting the bar 2 beats short, and that's perfect. Right? So we know something is going to happen, right? So we can lead up to this. We're going to make some kind of sound effect here, which is kind of nice because we have this kind of riser sound effect almost. So we have something that's actually kind of built into the actual recording, right? And we have him driving away. Okay. And it looks like, again, right here. So what we're actually going to do, so here we go. So this is another cool, we can add in another time signature change here. So instead of doing 4/4 here, you can see that this actually almost goes a full extra beat before it transitions to him in the car, which is another big change, right? So we see the car driving away, we have something happen, and then in my opinion, we should have something happen right here. So I'm actually going to switch this over to 5/4. Because we're going to get an extra beat in there, and that way, there we go, look at that. So it switches, it'll be right on that downbeat, and we can have something happen. So 2/4, 5/4, goes for 5 beats, and then boom. All right, so that right there is already 1 minute, right? And so we're about almost an hour into the stream now, I think. And so let's see if I can look here. I'm just curious. Yeah, almost an hour into the stream now. So what I think this is a good time to start making some music. Okay, so first thing that I like to do too. So now that we have the time signatures in there, and those make sense, we have to figure out what kind of sonic palette we're going to use. So the cool thing is I have a bunch of different synths I can use. So so you can see behind me, I have the ISENIN, which is basically a copy of the Jupiter 8 by Black Corporation. Amazing synthesizer. Probably my second favorite synth in my collection, which is the OB6. I've actually sold this thing, rebought it, which I realized after it's gone how much I loved it. So I have that guy. I have the Prophet 10, which is probably my favorite sounding synth right now. It's either between that or the Rev 2, which is on the bottom. So I have the Prophet 10 and the Prophet Rev 2, and then right here is the Prophet X. So I'm a big Dave Smith fan. So a lot of Dave Smith instruments. And then behind us, behind the chair here, which I actually also have on camera here, I have the Juno and the Mini Moog. So you can see when, and we'll be diving into those a little bit too. But I have everything hooked up to run through my keyboard that I have right in front of me. So I can actually cue everything from here. And you can see these are all desktop synths, which I prefer because there's VST plugins that actually go along with them. And so what I like to do is I have my sonic palette. I have what I want to use. I also have some VSTs I'm going to use. I use the Rolling Cloud. I love the Rolling Cloud. The Rolling Cloud's great, even though I have the Juno back there. But I especially like the SRX stuff. And I think we're going to use it for this. And I'll tell you why in a second. But we want to analyze the scene and we want to see what we got, right? So starting out, we have a church, right? So we kind of want to have something that signifies a holy place, right? Something that has a church-like element. But we also want to keep in mind the scenario, right? So we want to think about like what's going on in the scenario, right? So it's creepy. We're already I guess I didn't give you context. This is already about 40 minutes into the movie, I think, if I remember correctly. So the world's been established. We know there's these zombies. We know there's this plague of whatever's happening in the world, and essentially he's dealing with trying to be what he thinks is the last man alive, right? The last man on earth. So he's essentially dealing with that inner struggle, and this is kind of like a situation where he's kind of like, God, why? Why me, right? So we want to have the eeriness of that, but we also want to have it feel like a holy place, right? So I'm gonna take a drink real quick. All right. So, okay. So I'm actually going to start with some kind of pad sound. I'm going to go with the OB6 just because I think it's great. Now, what I like to do personally is these things come packed with presets. You know, you can make a lot of your own sounds. Oh, I forgot to mention, I also have this guy here. This is the Blue Marvin Behringer 2600, which we can use for textures. Actually, we will be using this for textures. I don't know if on this particular score, but we definitely will use it on the channel to add some cool textures. I did it actually in the opening scene that I posted on Instagram with this film. But there's a lot of presets in here, and I kind of gotten to know this synth so well that I know some of the sounds I want to use. And one of the sounds that I really like to use is this preset 408 called the cassette chorus. Now, one thing that I really like about Oberheim stuff. Oh, and by the way, this is the Sound Tower plugin. So the cool thing about the synths is they all have, all the desktop synths except for the ISEN and NIN, but somebody actually wrote a script for that to use with Ableton, which I'll show. But I can cue all my sounds from this, right? And I can make changes, I can automate, I can do all that kind of stuff right from the interface here and make it sound nice. Now, the cool thing about the OB is it's kind of dripping in 80s nostalgia, I'll say, which can be a gift and a curse. Sometimes people think it sounds a little dated. I personally love the sound, especially of the filter. It has what we call a SEM filter that was created by Tom Oberheim, which has like some crazy resonance distortion that really makes it kind of stick out, and you can do really cool sweeps. And once you hear it, you know it. But one of the things that I really like about this synth in particular is it uses VCOs. So the difference is, for those that don't know, VCOs are what we call voltage-controlled oscillators, and essentially they have voltage that regulate the pitch, right? So sending electrical signals to regulate the pitch, and you get what we call pitch drift, right? So the temperature of the room can change the sound, right? You have to kind of let these synths warm up, especially with the Moog and the Prophet. I actually notice it more, the Prophet 10. And it can change the sound. And this sound in particular has a really cool drifty sound. So let's play something here. So I'll just do something like G. Oh, actually, oops, we gotta get it so you guys can hear it here. Let me open up okay. 5 and 6. All right. So it actually sounds kind of spooky. Okay, so this one in particular, what it's doing is actually it's using the LFO here to change the frequency, right? So we're sending the LFO to our frequency here, and it's changing how the VCOs kind of drift, and we can make it go crazy. We can do something like, you can hear we get a lot of that modulation. I like to kind of keep it really low because I just want it to just drift a little bit. And it's synced right now to our time, so we got to change it up here. We're at 96 BPM, so we're just going to plug that in. And then I'm kind of thinking, I don't necessarily think of this as like a lead per se. I'm thinking more or less for like pad, like a pad background sound, right? So I'm actually, what I want to do, I want to give it width, right? So I wanted to give it width, and I'm going to do that by giving it a chorus. Now, there's other ways to do it, but for this particular instrument, the chorus that's built into the OB6 sounds incredible. So I like to use it on this plugin a lot. It's kind of a little bit of my secret there. And you can hear the difference. So let's go ahead and play. I'll just play that same G progression again. So you see we have the width now. Right? Okay. So it really gives it a lot, right? And there is reverb and other things. So I can kind of turn this on so you can hear what it sounds like. But personally, it's just a plate reverb, which is like a very almost immediate sound to kind of give it some width, I guess, and some chunkiness. I personally don't like to use it, honestly. I like to add my reverb after, so I have a little bit more control, and I have some digital Moog pedals and stuff like that, and we're gonna get there, we'll use all that. But for now, this is what we have. And what I'm also gonna do is, because I'm using this as a pad, you can see like right now with the envelope in particular, so if you're familiar with synthesis and sound design, we have essentially two different envelopes that we're using on this. We have our loudness envelope, which is to the amplifier, and we have our filter. Now, like I said, the cool thing about this synth particularly is the filter. The filter is what makes it special. So if I can change this, and you can see that resonance really makes a big difference there. But we want it to be more muffled because we're using it as a pad. And I'm actually going to change. Now you can see it kind of trails off there, but it's doing a little too much. I kind of want to stop. So I'm going to pull back the release on our loudness filter, and I'm actually going to increase the sustain so we don't get that drop in volume. Okay. Now we may want to have just a little bit more. Now with this synth in particular, the reason it's called the OB6 is because it has up to 6 voices. Okay, so that means that only 6 keys can be played at one time, and if you play more, it'll basically stop playing the key that was played the earliest out of the 6, right? So as I'm transitioning between sometimes you can hear some cutoffs, right? And that's where the Prophet 10 comes in, which is nice about it. That has 10 voices. So I can actually play up to 10 keys at a time, which gives me more, especially if I have a trail. So reducing this reverb not only is a creative choice, which I think fits, but also just from a synth engine standpoint. And this is one of the limitations that you'll run into sometimes with analog gear versus your VSTs, right? And knowing when to use those. But me personally, I think that creative limitation actually helps me creatively because now I know what it can do. I'm not second guessing what it can do, and I just know the direction I need to go. All right, so I have my sound. Now I have to think chord progression wise and key signature wise what I want to do in this particular instance. So me personally, I like the G minor. I like G minor. I like E flat minor. There's certain scenarios, and again, I know you're probably just thinking, just great music, man. But I will say that there's certain scenarios we want to think about who is your audience and who is playing the song. Now, if you're an individual composer, in this particular case, where we're doing an 80s style score, it doesn't really matter. We can pretty much pick whatever key signature we want, right? But if we're doing an orchestral score, and let's say we're going to do a live session, and live sessions are expensive. I've had the pleasure of working with orchestras on a few different projects, and usually you get very limited time with them. And the best scores tend to be the ones that can be played the easiest. So if I'm writing live music, for example, it's good to understand your instruments. So for example, if I'm writing live music for like an orchestra, I know that violins and string instruments in particular, they can play in the key of B minor and D natural very easily. So if I'm picking a key signature to play, that may be one of the better ones because in the fingering positions, they easily fall within, they can easily play those. And those are the first fingering positions that they learn when they're learning their instrument. So by the time you get to professional orchestra, they could play that in their sleep. Not saying they can't do the other keys, but normally the more flats you add or the more sharps you add to a certain extent, flats are worse, by the way, it becomes more difficult for them to play. So for example, E flat minor, which is also D sharp minor, where you're using all the black keys on the keyboard, right, would be very difficult, or not very difficult, I shouldn't say that. It would be more difficult than playing in D major or B minor, which has an F sharp and a C sharp, which on the violin are actually natural fingering positions for them. So just having that knowledge in mind is good to know. So it really depends on what you're trying to write for. Obviously this doesn't apply here, but just having that case. And if you're thinking to yourself, for example, I can tell you a lot of synthesizer scores have been adapted for orchestra, right? So, or if you're writing a hybrid score and you know that you may want to bring in, a string player to play, which I'm sure we'll do on this channel at some point, having that knowledge is important. Doesn't apply here though. So let's go ahead and we're going to kind of jump right in here. I'm going to, for the sake of this one, the key, I actually wrote it in G minor earlier. So the sound for this movie that I've been working on is kind of already established. So I think we can kind of stay within that same key. Or we can use one of the relative keys. So if you're familiar, we have the circle of fifths. I have my little handy dandy circle of fifths guy here. If you're not familiar with the circle of fifths, but this shows relationships between different key signatures. If you study jazz, this is like the Bible. If you're a DJ, also like the Bible, essentially. But this allows you to kind of mix certain key signatures together, and it'll tell you ways that you can play different things. So if you're new to composition, if you're thinking about getting more into understanding music theory, this is your guy, right? And you can find these, it's easy, you can look it up. But I will say, because we're writing in G minor, which is also B flat major, by the way, I can also go a couple different routes. So for example, in G minor, I have E flat and B flat are my two accidentals, or my two flat keys, or that I'm using when I'm writing on the keyboard. So I could move clockwise on our circle of fifths and go to one flat, right? So I could go to D minor or F major, which is one flat, or I could go the opposite way and add another flat. So for example, in this scene, because it's a little bit darker than the two intro scenes I've done, adding another accidental in could actually make it sound a little bit darker, right? So for example, I can give you a really good example. If you're new to production, E flat minor, a lot of hip hop music's written in E flat minor, and it just has a tendency to sound more aggressive. It's a little bit darker of a key. And E flat minor again is using 5 flats, right? So essentially, you have almost the limit of what you can do on the flat scale, right? So if I wanted to, I could add an extra flat, and I could go down to E flat major or C minor, since I'm in a minor key in my case, which would be 3 flats, and that would be E flat, B flat, and A flat, or E flat, yeah, B flat, E flat, and A flat if you do it in order, right? So we could add in that extra flat there, and maybe that's what we'll do. Now, the nice thing about that, and what I like about that, is C and G are related. So G is the perfect fifth of C. So I know if I go backwards down to C, it's going to match well in that case as well, right? So we can, so there's, again, you know, music theory, this applies to DJing, this applies to everything, understanding that knowledge, especially when it comes to film composition, because essentially when you're a film composer, it's almost like building a DJ mix. So you're essentially trying to figure out, how can I make all these songs work together, right? And so I think maybe we try that. Maybe we go with C minor on this one, and I love writing in the key of C minor, so we will do that. So just to kind of give you a hint, our sound reference, so we have C minor, which is that guy, and then we have our G. You can see, you can hear the drift, right? That's our G, G minor. We'll go to A flat major. Kind of almost sounds religious in a way, right? And then, oops, excuse me. Okay, and then so we have B flat, B flat major. Okay, so a bunch of different keys to choose from. In this particular case, like I said, we're going to make it pretty easy. Now, in addition to your understanding of music theory, understanding the relationships between the keys are important too. So what chord progression are we going to use, right? I think that's something that we have to think about, right? And so in this particular case, I'm actually going to use a common progression. I like using 1-5-6-4, or sometimes I'll even use 1-6-5-4. So to kind of, what that means is we have what we call in scales, we have degree, right? So a degree. And in the degree, that's how we are determining the relationship between those particular notes, right? So let's just listen to what scale degrees we have here. So I'm going to go with a 1-6-5, just kind of start to show you the difference. So we have our 1 in C minor, which is C. So we're going to do a C minor chord. Okay, and then we have our 6, which is A flat major. Okay, and our 5, which is G. That's our, and then our 4, which is F. Now we could play this a few different ways. I'm going to invert it. Okay, so that was like an F inversion. It's actually an F minor 7, or F major 7. Okay, so you can hear it there. That to me doesn't sound great, right? It sounds too happy, actually. That A flat major in there, so major keys tend to make it sound a little bit happier. So I'm actually going to, let's just start with our C, and I think what we're going to do is we may actually do some cool thing about synth is we can do some textural things here and kind of change it a little bit. And so I'm actually going to really focus on are two half steps. So in the key of C minor, we have half steps between the second and third interval, which is between D and E flat, and between the fifth and sixth interval, which is between G and G flat, or sorry, excuse me, G and A flat. So let's go ahead and I'm going to play just the tonic, but I'm also going to play the G and A flat at the same time. And it sounds pretty dark because of that half step. So we have our anchor tonic note, which is the name of the scale, C, and then we have our G and A flat. And we're going to play an octave on the C. So you see, it kind of sounds mysterious. So I'm thinking maybe we kind of have this one fade in. Yeah. And then let's try the E flat and D. Well, I kind of like that. We could hear our LFO in there. And then the wobble. Okay, so let's go ahead and just lay down this C here. So it's gonna have this pad sound in here.
The sun's already set. They'll be everywhere.
Okay, right? So I kind of have a little of my own build in there. Okay, so we're gonna go in here. Let's get this guy out of here. Sometimes you get what you want and sometimes you don't, right? So we're actually gonna, I didn't have a metronome plan, and let's just try to move these over so they're a little bit more on the bar here. Okay, so we have a little more control. And then what I'm gonna do actually is I thought this was kind of cool because I like how it comes in, but what I would like it to do is I want it to kind of show, because this is a scene switch right here. So I cut this right before a scene switch. I know that off camera from doing the edit. But what I want to do is I'm actually going to have this kind of fade in. So I'm going to start at 115 here, and I'm going to kind of fade this in, or I'm sorry, have the filter come down. And right now, how this is set up as a low pass filter. And so I'm going to have it track, and I'm going to turn on full because I want to get the full effect of the filter. And we're going to have it actually track down, and you'll be able to see it move here. So let's play that. Can kind of adjust it a little bit.
The sun's already set.
I'm gonna build it back up.
They'll be everywhere.
And then I actually was thinking, just watching this, we know we need like drums or some kind of percussive sound to come in right here at 11. So I actually moved these. So this is one of the things with Ableton that's a little annoying is because of these time signature changes, it actually the clip has its own time signature. So sometimes you're adjusting it to the grid here, it gets a little weird. So what you kind of have to do is just kind of eyeball it, and that one was fine. We want to put this one, and you can see I'm moving it down here, but it also is changing up here. I want that to fall right on 4. This one came in a little early, so we want this to be right there. And then what I'm going to do, because we want to go from this holy sound to something that's more demonic, right, or evil. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to add in a little bit of distortion. Okay, so we're going to have it start, and it's going to fade in, but as this kind of builds, and we're going to go into right here on the top, we're going to put this into automation mode, and we're going to add in some distortion here, right? So as this starts to build up, right? So he says, oh no, look at the time, right? So we see here.
The sun's already set. They'll be everywhere.
And actually, I think I want, now that I'm watching that, I actually want this to come in. I want this to kind of step up quicker.
They'll be everywhere.
So right there, we need to change. So we actually have the cut right, but because of how we have the attack on the synth, we're missing that hit, right? Because it's kind of gradually fading in, which works really well, actually, for the beginning, all right? So we have this attack. We want the beginning to kind of fade in like that. But what I would like to do, get some feedback there. Sorry, I think it's the headphone cable. Sorry, guys. Is we would like that attack to go down. So I want this attack to actually hit right here. So we need the attack here. So see, it kind of fades in, which is what we want. We're gonna put other sounds in here too, but this is gonna be our kind of our main piece. Ooh, and that's
the sun's already set. They'll be everywhere.
So I think that's good. I think it sounds really good. All right, and again, I'm hearing some other things in there that we'll get to. So you're probably like, oh, that's it. No, it's not it. We're gonna add in more. And I want to make sure right, almost at this on beat 2, like we discussed. I want this to kind of come in just a tad bit early, and then we want on beat 2. I'm gonna actually cut this off here so we get this build.
They'll be everywhere.
And actually, you know what? This might actually be okay to bring in a little bit more.
They'll be everywhere.
We're gonna bring this back a little bit. I think the distortion is a tad bit too much right now. So let's go in here. I'm gonna go distortion amount. I'm gonna put it back in automation mode. You can also hit A on the Ableton keyboard, and it'll change into automation mode. I'm going to distortion. And we're gonna kind of bring it down just a little bit here. I love that waveriness in there. It's very cool. It's kind of that matches the grogginess of him waking up too, which I really like.
The sun's already set. They'll be everywhere.
And actually, we get a little trick here because we can actually make this come in early too, right at this switch on the second beat. It's a little bit before the second, but because the attack, I think will be good. So we're gonna actually bring this one in a little earlier, right here. And then we're gonna bring this guy also in just a little earlier so we can kind of make this work for what we're trying to do here. Give it some change here. And I said I want this to go to 2. Right, okay. So let's see what that sounds like. So you can see I'm kind of moving it around.
The sun's already set. They'll be everywhere.
Okay, and actually I'm going to cut it just a little earlier because it has some release on it.
The sun's already set. They'll be everywhere.
Okay, and we're actually going to cut this off. So this is a situation. Okay, and let's get this choir out of there. And we're going to bring that distortion back down. So we're going to have it We're gonna have it kind of peak right about halfway, and then we're right back down. All right, so let's hear this.
The sun's already set. They'll be everywhere.
Okay, and we're gonna go to the frequency cutoff, and we're actually gonna do the same thing here for that as well, except we're gonna have this one drop off quite a bit, right at 2. So right after, we want the drums to kick in. Right there, right, and that's a little bit too much. Now, because there's such a big change here, technically, I probably should change this to 5/4, right? And I should probably do something like this because we're gonna have that kind of swell there. I'm gonna take this all the way over here. All right, and you can see it kind of pushed everything else, so now we have to fix all this. All right, so we have, now this is gonna change, so we can actually keep this as a measure of 5/4, so you can see kind of, sometimes you just gotta adapt. All right, so now that's good. And it kind of fixed everything else down the line too, it looks like. So we're still good with everything else. Yep, still good with everything else. Okay, cool. All right, so let's hear this again.
The sun's already set. They'll be everywhere.
And actually, you know what? I want this to build up through this whole 5/4 bar. And really open up.
Everywhere.
And we know
They'll be everywhere.
we want this to also change. So we're gonna move this guy over here.
Everywhere.
And then I'm actually gonna take all that out. So let's see what we got here. We're gonna record it.
The sun's already set. They'll be everywhere.
Okay, perfect, right? Okay, so it's a little quiet. So I am going to actually go to my OB here and I'm gonna boost the volume. Now the cool thing about this plugin particularly, not all of them, but this one actually has the program volume built into it here, so I can boost it up there. Actually, you know what? We're also gonna just change the tack. I think it's a little too slow right now. Let's bring it down. There we go. All right. Much better.
The sun's already set. They'll be everywhere.
Okay, right. Okay, perfect. So sound. Yeah, got a sound built in that I really like, right? And I kind of know I want to build in like that. I know at this particular point right here, I'm gonna have something come in. I actually have an idea with the Juno for this. I'm gonna have some kind of, you know what though? What I don't like about that right now is I feel like we have that distortion ending really soon. We actually need more suspense there, right? We need to really crank up to that particular point because that's when he first sees the zombies. So we need to have something there that really makes it stand out. So we're actually gonna have a peak at that point, right? And then kind of have a fall off here. All right, let's try that out. And we're gonna give it some noise too, like as it builds. Let's try that. So again, it's a process, right? So you know you're gonna see things, you're gonna try things. There's no method. I'll try something and be like, yeah, I don't really like that, and then try something else. I mean, that's the beauty about this.
Set. They'll be everywhere.
Perfect, right? And we can actually hear some of the distortion in there. Actually adds to the detunage a little bit. Okay, so, right, so we hear the suspense, right? Now, what I'm gonna do too is I actually want there to, well, we'll actually get there in a second. I have an idea. I'm gonna put a riser in there too because I feel like I need something. And then we're gonna have something come in right there, right? So we want, now, I think the stereotypical approach to this would be to add in like some kind of like, I don't know, taiko drums or some kind of big sounding drum thing. I personally want to try something different, but you know, it's easy to kind of give into those temptations. I'm going to rename this though, and I always like to name it the patch. I usually know what synth I'm using, but I'm going to rename this to U408 just because sometimes when you close it, it does not like to reopen to the same patch. And that's another thing too, actually, I kind of like is that it's never the same. So you know, it's one of those things where I'm changing it as I go, and so I'm never quite getting the same sound each time. Now, what I want to do here is I also want to add in. We got a nice little low sound here. With the wavering, I'm actually going to EQ it just a little bit, just because I feel like there's a lot in the mid-range right now, like low mids.
The sun's all.
Let's actually solo this real quick. There is some of that boxiness in there. All right. And I am going to use Dext, which is a cool VST. It mimics the DX7. It's free. You can get it on GitHub, and it has all the cartridges ever used for the DX. So I highly recommend it. And we're gonna just, oops, I'm using my favorite sounds here. Add some high frequency vibes in here. And we're just going to use the tonic for this one.
The sun's already set. They'll be everywhere.
So this is pretty cool, and it actually works out really well too because it has this nice swell that comes in before the OB6 starts to build. So that actually works out great. And I'm going to add in my own auto filter here in Ableton, and I'm going to kind of mimic and just kind of fine tune it a little bit so it falls a little quicker. And we're going to go to frequency, not resonance. Something like that. And then right here, when this starts to build back up again, we'll bring it back up.
The sun's already set. They'll be everywhere.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. Okay. All right. So let's bring this guy back in here. And we're going to add in some crazy reverb to it. So this is the Fab Filter Pro R. This is like easily my go-to reverb. Which, by the way, I'm working on affiliate links too. So hopefully I'll be able to get you guys some discounts and stuff like that as this channel grows. So like and subscribe, you know, if you're on, because I have a lot of connections in this industry. And this is something new that I'm starting. So I'm trying to leverage some of those contacts to share with the community some of the cool plugins and stuff that I like to use. All right, let's see. We go black hole, just because it cuts out some of the low mids on the reverb. Let's get rid of this, close window. I'm gonna solo this for right now. Actually, let's go ahead. We're gonna actually, you know what? I think we're gonna bring it up. Actually, I'll layer it here. An octave. You can see we're getting a lot in this low end. So these could be sub-frequencies that we really can't hear, but they can affect the mix. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go in, we're just gonna put an EQ here, and we're gonna eliminate, oh yeah, those are super low. You see they're below 30 Hertz, but they can affect the way the mix, like the limiter comes in. Okay. So we're gonna really sit this in the background here.
The sun's already set. They'll be everywhere.
Perfect. Okay, so last thing I'm probably going to do for today's stream, because we are almost, what, 2 hours in, I guess, now? Hour and 35. Okay, so we got some time. I'm actually we're gonna go in and we're gonna do the Prophet Rev 2. Let me turn this bad boy on. Oh, he's already on. Okay, cool. There's a particular bass sound I like. So let me just talk about this a little bit. So we talked about the OB and its unique sound with its VCOs. The Prophet Rev 2 actually has what we call DCOs. So it's digitally controlled oscillators. And those oscillators, the difference being is they actually use an algorithm to make sure that they're constantly in tune. So you don't have to worry about the room temperature, all those types of things. And they usually give you a little bit more flexibility for sound design. And they tend to sound a little more modern because they don't have that wavering sound, right? So in certain scenarios, this actually works really well. So for example, pad sounds, some bass sounds, because if you have wavering low frequencies, it can sound a little weird when smaller speakers try to recreate that sound. So it just depends on what you're using it for. for me, there's one particular sound that I love to use on the Rev 2, and it's probably one of the main reasons I keep it around, is this preset, excuse me, preset called Velo Strings. And it's a nice, good bass pad that I like to use for texture purposes. It gives it a nice low end. Which this score, because it's an orchestral score and the year it was recorded, lacks a lot of bass frequencies just because they didn't have the instrumentation or the mixing ability to be able to, the recording ability to be able to do that. So we have this here, and let's go ahead and we're gonna let you hear it here. So you can see, it still sounds vintage. It just doesn't have that drifting, and there's some things you can do that can kind of mimic that, but we're gonna do really low on this, kind of like this. Now, we are gonna add some religious textures to this. Like I said, I talked about using the SRX earlier. We are gonna do that. And actually, I'm gonna bring this down a little bit more because I want it to be really low. Okay, so let's go ahead and we're gonna close this. Again, since we're just holding it, I can actually just stop this. There's no reason to hold it for the entire thing. I'm gonna bring out the, I just realized the entire time I'm talking to you guys, and I'm not even showing what's happening on the screen. Wow, that's good. Somebody should have said something to me, man. All right, that's fine. Sorry about that. So we have our Rev 2 sound here. Okay.
The sun's already set.
All right, so when he said the sun's already set, that's when we're gonna bring up the cutoff a little bit so we can feel that tension. So we're 15 here, and we're gonna bring it, when he says the sun's already set, we can see the dialogue there. We actually start to bring it up. Bring it right here, and then we're gonna have it ramp up even more towards the end here, and we're gonna give it a little bit of
The sun's already set. They'll be everywhere.
Okay. Now, in this particular case, cutoff 1 and cutoff 2 are actually tied to the left and right speaker. So we actually have to make cutoff 2 match here in this particular preset. So let's go ahead and get that. So we have cutoff 1, we're just going to do cutoff 2, and we're just going to copy and paste it. Boom. Also, the Rev 2 is an 8-voice synthesizer. I have the 8-voice version. They actually make a 16-voice version. I might buy the upgrade card for it eventually, but for right now, no need. I'll do the same thing here, cut out some of those boxy frequencies. Just copy and paste the OBX. You can see it changes a little bit.
The sun's already set. They'll be everywhere.
Okay, perfect. And I think we're gonna add some sound effects in this eventually too, because we have the pair of zombies there that are waiting for them, but we'll do that later on. Okay, so let's go ahead and record this.
The sun's already set. They'll be everywhere.
Perfect. Okay, and actually, because this is now our bass sound, we can actually just eliminate all this bass from our OB here. I think it would work really well. Let's just minimize this here. And then we can group these together. Command G. I'm just got them solo just to kind of hear what it'll sound like because we can cut. Beautiful, right? Okay, cool. All right, so I'm actually going to put an auto filter on this, and I think I'm going to, again, match this gentle fade-in we have going on here. We're going to start really low, pretty much just sub-bass territory. Actually, let's start more in like 50. 53 is fine. And we're going to have it kind of gradually come in with this. So we can kind of hear that low sub-bass rumble in there. Let's just bring it down just a little bit here. So with the synthesizers in particular, especially analog, so keep in mind a lot of these synths, each of them were designed to kind of be the lead, right? Set. So it's like you're really kind of EQing as you go. Right, and I'm pretty sure we have our limiter kicking in here. I think I can hear it. Let's look at it again. A little, yeah, a little bit. So we got to bring this down a little bit. We're gonna do we'll do more mixing stuff later. But for right now, for purposes of this episode, we're fine. All right, so let's go ahead and bring in our SRX. Okay, so again, this is the Rolling Cloud. Love it. I have an Ultimate membership. Don't want to close that. And I use a couple of different plugins. I was actually using the Juno quite a bit before I had a Juno. And it's funny now that I actually, the Rolling Cloud is so accurate on the Juno that I can actually pull up presets that are in the Rolling Cloud version and just copy the faders over to the Juno, and it's almost like perfect. So the Rolling Cloud's good. I highly recommend it. You know, I just always wanted a Juno, and one came up, and so I was able to get one. But anyways, so let's go ahead and I'm gonna close that, and we are going to focus on the choir sound in here. So it's after the VP330, which was a classic rolling choir synthesizer. So you can see it kind of, right? And I'm actually, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna layer this with a real, well, not a real choir, a sampled choir from Spitfire. But I want it to sound, like I said, the goal is just to make it sound 80s like. So I kind of want to have a little synthetic texture to it. Okay, so let's try this. We're gonna actually, you know what we're gonna do first? Let's bring in our Spitfire choir for it. So there's a Spitfire one I like to do called Epic Choirs. We'll bring that guy in first here. And we're gonna do just the long. So this is a really full sounding choir. Bring down the dynamics and the expression a little bit. Okay, let's see what we got. So this is altos and tenors, so we're gonna start kind of lower here. Okay, a little bit too over the top to me. So you know what? I think we're gonna do, change my mind. Again, trial and error, trial and error. We are gonna keep this because we are gonna use it eventually. but I have an idea where I want that to come in. We're actually going to go into another plugin that I love. I have the East-West Composer Library, and we are going to pull up, oh, I got an update for it. We're going to pull up just like an individual sound here. Not that. So an individual voice here. There's Voices of Opera. Oh, and we can see how there's a cutoff there. We actually want to go to legato because we want them to be connected. A little. Better, so we'll use the ah instead. Okay. We're going to drip this in reverb. I think we use the Eternity plugin here. Appear far away. Okay, and where you want to sound dark, where you have a lot of width. So we're using those minor second and minor sixths again.
The sun's already set.
Beautiful. Okay. So here's some nice little, close this one. Again, I was just kind of playing along with picture, which actually works out. So it's off a little bit. I'm gonna adjust to the grid, but I kind of actually like, and to get that legato effect, we want to make sure there's some overlap here. That way we're getting that change. Okay.
The sun's already set.
How that fades out is almost perfect. Okay, beautiful. Okay, so like I said, coming back to this SRX now. I'm gonna make it really quiet.
The sun's already set. They'll be everywhere.
You hear it in the background, so. So let's do.
They'll be everywhere.
So actually, I'm going to do something kind of cool here. I think I want to have it kind of fall off with some automation here. So we're going to go here. Oh, oh, oh. Oh, whoa, what are you doing? What are you doing, Ableton? I'm gonna start right here. Oh, sorry, guys. Usually I set this Command K. I usually set record as a quick button, which tapping an R. I forgot to do that. So there we go. So again, we're gonna do. That's a C minor. It's pretty much like a C minor with a major second in there. It's not quite a C minor 9 because we're not going up an octave, but it sounds kind of cool. All right, so let's try it again.
They'll be everywhere. The sun's already set. They'll be everywhere.
Actually,
The sun's already set.
and we're going to take this and we're going to put a filter on there. But before we do that, get the 100% velocity, and we are going to, actually, you know what? So actually what I'm going to do something kind of interesting. I'm going to bounce this in place, and the reason I'm going to do that is because I want the waveform, and then I'm going to actually do the transposition on the wave because it'll give it some digital artifacts, which I want for the pitch drop here. So we want to get it.
They'll be everywhere.
So right when it starts to run, we'll have it kind of start to fall.
They'll be everywhere. They'll be everywhere.
Okay. Yeah. I'm gonna kind of get a fade here. Boom. I love it. Love it. Okay. Let's actually give it some the eternity also. Actually, you know what we can do just for CPU processing power purposes? Let's group these two together because we're going to use the same reverb. Okay, so let's hear what this sounds like.
They'll be everywhere.
Ooh, that's gonna sound cool. Okay, let's hear it from the beginning.
The sun's already set. They'll be everywhere.
Okay, cool. There are some other sound effects and stuff that we could put in here. You know, let's see. So I'm going to save this start here until the next episode that we stream, maybe tomorrow.
The sun's already set. They'll be everywhere.
So I think, let's see. I want to add, like I said, I want to add in some kind of riser right here. So we're going to my samples folder. Actually, I have a sample pack that I did for a site a while ago that I never got paid for, by the way. Even though it's up for sale on their site, I refuse to give them their name out, but well, that might sound kind of cool. Sometimes going through the sound effects folders, you can find some cool stuff. So I want to actually... These are my sound effects, by the way.
They'll be
We'll come back to that. I don't like that. But that's kind of cool. That actually might sound pretty cool if we... Come a little bit earlier. Right when that screen changes, it's a good way to kind of mark that little change.
sun's already set. They'll be everywhere.
Okay, and so we're gonna add a riser. I want actually. There's one in particular that I'm thinking that I could use. I'm not sure if I think it'll be too much though. We might actually be able to make this work. Take this guy right here. Reverse it around so I get it, and it's going to build up. Oh. I think this will be good. Let's see here. Perfect.
They'll be everywhere.
Beautiful. We're going to give it a little echo. Like that. There we go. I'll put that in with that reverb. So this reverb group here. Now I could send it to, so okay, let me explain this for a second. I could actually send it to one of these send return channels, but I noticed that when you send to the send return channels in Ableton, sometimes the panning gets messed up, and it'll I don't know why, like it'll keep things centered. It's like the pan is overriding on the reverb channel, like even if you're only using it as a send return. So I don't like doing that, even though it probably is, I guess. These are basically like bus channels, essentially. It's kind of how I'm treating them, these group channels. See, that's a little bit of texture in the background.
The sun's already set.
So also you can see there's this facial reaction here that he has. Like, whoa, I overslept, right? So I'm actually gonna take another synthesizer plugin here. We're getting a little bit out of the 80s, I guess, now, aren't we? Either way, it's kind of cool. We will use more analog gear, trust me. I just like adding some other stuff in here. So, oh, definitely not that. I kind of like that one. So Yuhi, another great plugin. Yeah, like right there. Actually, I liked it lower, even though we have so much low bass going on, but maybe we can EQ out some of it.
The sun's already...
It just adds a small bit of texture. It doesn't take away from what's happening on the screen. We are then going to need to get out some of the sub bass there to make room for those pads. We can kind of do some cool EQ work here. Actually, you know, this is a really cool point to bring out one of my favorite plugins. So Moog makes the Moogafuga plugins, which are great, by the way. They're awesome. Let's do this. So we're going to give it some echo. This is the delay pedal. I give that almost a sci-fi texture, but that's what we kind of want. Like I said, mysterious, holy, spiritual, sci-fi, whatever you want to call it. Just something that feels otherworldly. Perfect. Oh, we got to cut it off a little bit earlier though.
The sun's already set.
Beautiful. That is perfect. Little things like that can make a big difference. Now, actually, maybe we bring in the Prophet 10 here because I have an idea. And that'll be the last thing we do for today's stream. Got the Prophet 10 on there. All right. Prophet 10, here we come. All right. So again, Sound Tower plugin. Love this thing. The best. We are going to, that's on 4? Was it on 4? I guess it is on 4. Okay. It's mono, so the Prophet 10 is mono. It's recreation of the original Prophet 5, so this has just one instrument output. But there is, in particular, one sound I was using. Where are you at? What was it called? Mindful, I think? Yeah. That guy. Sounds like a piano hit. So we're going to turn this down. We're going to get it right when he changed his face. Look at that.
The sun's all. The sun's all.
Whoops. And he's like, oh no, right? Actually, we might want to make it when he looks away. He realizes. There we go.
The sun's all.
Perfect. Okay, let's add this in here.
The sun's already set. They'll be everywhere.
And actually, I think we're going to bring back in the choir in this part too, once we do our escape here. All right, we're going to bring our EQ8 in here also, and get rid of some of these bass frequencies again, make room. Put these together because we can actually, again, just use it as kind of a bus channel. Love it. Now it sounds a little flat right now. Actually, you know what? We're going to put underneath this. I have an idea. I actually have a sound effect. Oh, it's going to call it Giant Footsteps. I think this will actually work really well right here. we go.
The sun's already set. They'll be everywhere. The sun's already set. They'll be
so I think we need that sun's already set. This needs to come in, that drop down needs to come in a little earlier, right? So we actually want to hear more of an exaggerated drop off here. I think we can actually have it fall all the way to right here as soon as he exits. Let me raise it back up. That sounds kind of cool.
The sun's already set. They'll be everywhere.
Love it. Love it. Love it.
The sun's already set. They'll be everywhere.
Beautiful. Okay, so again, I think that's what we'll stop today, and we'll pick up on our next stream. But let's just play it from the beginning, hear what it sounds like. I think we've got a lot going on here. We might add on 2 more. I think it needs maybe a couple more high-end frequencies, but we'll see. Let's listen. Let me bring it up for a little bit for you guys.
The sun's already set. They'll be everywhere.
Okay, sounds pretty cool. Again, there's no mix obviously on that. We'll have to go through, and that'll be a whole thing on its own. But for this episode, from a creative standpoint, I like where it's at, right? So nice little transition here. We have this nice little vocal sample that kind of adds to that mysteriousness. Him realizing he fell asleep with the growl. And actually, we may not even use that prophet. I wonder. This actually might work fine with just a hit there. Yeah, I actually kind of like that more. Well, we'll leave it just in case we decide to use it, but we're going to mute it for right now. Because it actually sounds pretty cool with just a hit.
The sun's already.
Because this has a growl right after it.
The sun's already set. They'll be everywhere.
All right. Well, so I think that is, we'll call it the end for today. Appreciate y'all tuning in. Like I said, we'll be back, or I'll be back soon. Maybe tomorrow, maybe Thursday, we'll see. But other than that, I think we're in a good spot. We'll save this here. We'll pull it up. Appreciate you all. Looking forward to talking to you next time. Make sure you like and subscribe. All those go a long ways. Like I said, working on a lot of cool things for the channel. Giveaways, that kind of thing with some of the connections I have. Hopefully you learned a little something today on the stream. Leave a comment.